In a world historic announcement that officially marks the end of the post-Cold War era, the leaders of Russia, India, and China today formalized the creation of a new military and economic pact, the RIC security bloc. The signing of this Eurasian Collective Security Treaty in a grand ceremony held in Moscow constitutes the most significant geopolitical realignment of the 21st century. It creates a powerful new superpower bloc explicitly designed to counter what its members describe as the reckless and aggressive expansionism of a fractured but still dangerous Nato. This move, a direct and calculated response to the recent deployment of Western long-range missile and military personnel to Ukraine, effectively cleaves the planet into three competing spheres of influence and sets the stage for a new and perilous era of global competition. The ceremony itself was a masterclass in political symbolism. Russian President Vladimir Putin, Chinese President Xi Jinping, and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi stood side by side to sign the treaty, a powerful visual statement of Eurasian unity against the West. In a joint declaration read to the world's media, the leaders stated that the new alliance was a defensive and stabilizing force made necessary by the unilateral actions of certain Western nations that have dismantled global security, violated international law, and brought the world to the brink of a wider conflict. The declaration argued that the old Western-dominated international order had failed and that a new multipolar structure based on mutual respect for national sovereignty was required to ensure peace and prosperity. For Russia, the formation of the RIC bloc is the ultimate vindication of its long-term strategic objective. President Putin, speaking as the host of the summit, declared that the West's attempt to isolate Russia had failed spectacularly. They wanted to strangle us with sanctions and defeat us on the battlefield through their proxies, Putin stated. Instead, they have only succeeded in bringing the great civilizations of Eurasia closer together. The actions of Nato in Ukraine, culminating in the deployment of their troops and the targeting of Russian territory, left us with no choice but to formalize our strategic partnership. The RIC security bloc will be the guarantor of security for our member states and a bulwark against any further aggression. Moscow has successfully transformed a regional conflict into a global realignment, breaking out of its diplomatic isolation and positioning itself as a foundational pillar of a new world order. For China, the decision to enter a formal military alliance is a monumental shift from its long-standing policy of avoiding such entanglement. However, the escalating actions from the West provide Beijing with a perfect justification. The Chinese Foreign Ministry released a detailed white paper explaining the decision, citing a pattern of economic and military hostility from the United States and its allies. The document referenced the Trump administration's threat of 100% tariff, describing it as an attempt to cripple China's economic development. It also pointed to the German-British decision to send missiles and troops to Ukraine as the final straw. Beijing argued that this move proved the Western alliance was willing to risk a direct great power war, forcing China to seek collective security to protect its own interests, including its vast global trade routes and its partnership with Russia. The RIC bloc, from Beijing's perspective, is a necessary shield against American attempts at containment. The inclusion of India is perhaps the most stunning and consequential element of the new alliance. For decades, India has skillfully navigated the world stage by maintaining its strategic autonomy and balancing relationship with all major powers. However, recent events have forced a dramatic recalculation in New Delhi. Indian Prime Minister Modi, in his address, explained the move in pragmatic, not ideological terms. He pointed to the unreliability of the West, highlighting the deep fracture within NATO and the unpredictable isolationist turn of the United States under President Trump. He argued that the West's obsession with the Ukraine conflict had led to instability and economic damage that directly harmed India's interests. India's destiny lies in a stable and prosperous Asia, Modi declared. We cannot tie our future to alliances that are consumed by their own internal conflicts and reckless policies. By joining with our great neighbors, Russia and China, we are not choosing a side in an old conflict. We are choosing to build a new future. We will be a voice for stability and balance within this new structure, ensuring that the 21st century is truly an Asian century. For India, the BRIC bloc is a vehicle to secure its own rise in a world where the West is no longer seen as a reliable partner. The substance of the Eurasian Collective Security Treaty is sweeping and comprehensive. Militarily, it established a formal mutual defense clause. Though one more flexible than NATO's Article 5, it states that an act of aggression against one member will be considered a grave threat to the security of all members, who will then coordinate a joint response. The treaty immediately established a joint military command to be headquartered in Novosibirsk, Russia, to oversee the integration of their armed force. The first of their joint military exercise, codenamed Sovereign Shield 2025, is scheduled to take place in the Indian Ocean and will involve naval, air, and cyber units from all three nations. The bloc also pledged to collaborate on the development of next-generation weaponry, combining Russia's advanced military designs, China's industrial capacity, and India's software and technology expertise. Economically, the treaty aims to create a sanctions-proof financial architecture completely independent of the US dollar and Western financial institutions. The members have agreed to create a new digital reserve currency backed by a basket of their own currencies and physical commodity like gold and oil. They will also build out their alternative to the SWIFT banking system, making it the standard for trade between the three nations and inviting all the countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America to join. This economic fortress is a direct countermeasure to the sanctions policies of the European Union and the tariff threats from the United States, designed to insulate the economies from Western coercion. The reaction from the United States was one of fury and validation. President Donald Trump saw the new alliance as the ultimate confirmation of his entire worldview. "I have been telling you this for years," Trump exclaimed in a fiery press conference from the White House lawn. "While our stupid leaders were wasting trillions of dollars protecting other countries, our enemies were getting together. Russia, India, and China, they are all together now against us. This is what happened when you have weak leadership. This is what happened when you fight other people's war. The fake news and the warmongers in Europe like Merch and Starmer, they call us this. They push them all together. My policy is America first, and now you see why. We will build up our military like never before, and we will take care of our own country. We are done with NATO's problem." Secretary of State Marco Rubio adopted a more somber strategic tone, officially labeling the new pact an access of autocracy in a major foreign policy address. Rubio outlined the administration's response. "A new iron curtain is descending across the Eurasian landmass," he said. "This alliance of revisionist power seeks to overturn the international order that has provided peace and prosperity for generations. The United States accepts this new reality. Our strategic priority must now be a singular focus on containing the BRIC bloc. The era of our deep entanglement in European regional dispute is over. The reckless action of some of our European allies have accelerated this threat, and they must now bear the primary responsibility for their own continental defense. The United States will now pivot all necessary resources, diplomatic, economic, and military, to the Indo-Pacific theater, which is now the central front in a new global struggle for freedom." The Pentagon, under the leadership of Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth, immediately began to implement this pivot. Hegseth announced the acceleration of the U.S. troop drawdown from Germany, saying that those forces were needed for new and expanded bases in the Pacific. He put a formal request before Congress for a massive increase in the defense budget, specifically to fund the construction of a new generation of submarine, long-range bombers, and space-based assets designed to counter the combined military might of the BRIC bloc. "The European theater has become a strategic liability," Hegseth stated bluntly. "The primary threat to the American homeland now emanates from the consolidated power of the BRIC alliance. Our military posture must and will reflect that new reality. In Europe, the news of the Reich Bloc formation was received with absolute horror, particularly in Berlin and London. The bold move by Chancellor Merz and Prime Minister Starmer, which was intended to show strength and leadership, has backfired in the most catastrophic way imaginable. They had gambled that they could intimidate Russia into submission. Instead, they have provoked the creation of a unified global adversary and triggered the definitive withdrawal of their American security guarantor. They are now left facing this new superpower bloc with a deeply divided continent and a hollowed out NATO at their back. The leaders of the Tallinn Pact nations, who had cheered the German-British escalations, are now in a state of quiet panic, realizing that their defiance has left them more exposed than ever. Meanwhile, in Paris and Rome, there is a bitter sense of "we told you so." President Macron and Prime Minister Meloni issued a desperate call for an emergency European summit. We warned that a policy of endless escalation would lead to disasters. That joint statement read, "Now that disaster is upon us, Europe stands divided and weakened, facing a new and powerful adversary that our own actions helped create. The path of confrontation has failed. We must, before it is too late, find a path back to diplomacy and de-escalation." But their voices are now drowned out by the drums of a new global Cold War. The world has been fundamentally and irrevocably reshaped. The fragile post-Soviet peace is over. The era of globalization has given way to an age of fragmentation. A new global struggle has begun, not between ideologies like communism and capitalism, but between competing geopolitical blocs, each armed, ambitious, and deeply suspicious of the others. Many of my listeners, like 70%, haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel. And so many of you don't even know that you haven't subscribed. And that is actually what makes the show going. It's almost like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask again and again, because it enables us to grow and grow and grow. And we're going for the long haul here. And listen, if this is your first time listening to So Came Rich, you don't have to subscribe. You guys, your first one's on me. But if you have watched this show before, it's like you're a freeloader now. So all I would ask you is, if you have seen this show before and you like it, help me, help my team here. Hit that subscribe and like button now, and we will continue to build the show for you. That I swear. Thank you to all of you guys who have subscribed. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. That's all for me for today. I will see you soon. Bye for now.